Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And I've seen this post circulating around the WoW PvP community from the pro player Whaaz, which is a player that I highly respect. Easily considered the GOAT of World of Warcraft PvP. You know, you call him the faker of WoW PvP. Most players have set him as the target to beat this year as far as AWC. That seems to be where all of the glory is to be found. And I am very curious to see what his opinions are here currently of the healer balance in WoW PvP and what type of feedback or direction he would actually prefer the game to go in. And as always, if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. So you can see on the screen here, we got a giant wall of text from him that he has placed on Twitter. So we're going to be going through it individually and dissecting every single point to try and see if it's ultimately going to be a good decision or a bad decision, depending on my own opinion here. Remember, I do respect him as a player. Might not mean that he's right about everything. So I am very curious to see what is going on. So part one, Whaaz's thoughts on balancing healer specs to make the game more enjoyable and have more healers be viable. This is the main thing that I've been trying to just hammer in, that healer balance for PvP is the same as tank balance for Mythic Plus. If you want to have more groups forming easily, then you need to have the healers be balanced. If it's top heavy where only one healer spec is viable or one tank spec is viable, and people who don't want to go those specs can't get into groups playing the specs they want to play, you're bottlenecking your game mode and you're limiting the amount of people that can play, ultimately leading to a loss of player retention. It's by far the most important component, and they had been iterating on it, you know, patch by patch, whittling away, working on it, but it feels like it took a little bit too long, and it's still not 100% there. There are obviously some issues still remaining, so I'm curious to see his opinion on this. He's made a little quick tier list. He's got Preservation at S+ tier. I would agree with that. Restoration Druid at S+ tier, and I like that he's got this note here. Very close to Prez, however, worse in Shuffle, but better in 3v3. I think that depending on the context here, Druid might feel weaker. So you might be reading this and being like, well, I play Shuffle and I feel really weak. Preservation Evoker is clearly the best, which I think there is a distinct difference there. But in coordinated play where you have more assistance from your team, some of the weaknesses that Resto Druid has can be shored up much more easily. Mistweaver is A tier for him. And in my opinion, they've just bang on. Mistweaver is c'est magnifique, exactly where you'd want a healer to be at the moment. Restoration Shaman, he actually is ranking higher than Holy Paladin and Discipline Priest, which I don't necessarily agree with, along with Holy Priest. I think this is influenced a little bit more from his standpoint of competitive 3v3, possibly. Some main Resto Shamans have been saying that it's improving a lot. My experience with it is that it's definitely, you know, below these three for sure with where he's got. And maybe there's like a bunch of tedious debate between these. I think that almost all these specs that are below Mistweaver need some type of assistance in terms of throughput, except maybe Disc Priest and Shuffle, which this is another thing. And then Holy Priest, which has decent throughput for burst damage, but not so great for overall sustain at the moment. But Chastise is still a really just powerful component as far as crowd control. He's got Holy Paladin as B-. It's so funny, my opinion on Paladin moving into this patch on day one. I was like, wow, Paladin feels a lot better. And then 4 days later, I'm like, okay, never mind, it's not. So yeah, Holy Paladin just, I don't even really know exactly what is wrong with it. It just feels like it's lacking throughput in a lot of cases, which is strange because it's generally so good on throughput. It might be a crowd control avoidance thing. You know, Preservation Evoker didn't have Verdant Embrace, multiple charges, and immuning CC all the time. Or if Holy Paladin had a mechanic like that, maybe it wouldn't be felt as heavily. And he's got Disc Priest as the bottom. Now in competitive 3v3, I agree with this. But in Shuffle, I don't agree with this. But maybe as you get higher rated, it could become more true. It's kind of like a low rated pub stomping spec where if enemies don't know how to deal with your atonement style of healing, then you just free cast the whole game and you get to carry the game by doing as much damage as a DPS. But if people know how to shut you down, you feel very weak in that regard. So he breaks this down more specifically, I think, now to understand this, although I do disagree with some of these. It's kind of tedious to disagree with these bottom ones because these ones I kind of feel like either need a little bit of readjustment in their play or some tuning, and then obviously some tuning down on Prez. But he says that mostly there's only two viable healers, Preservation Evoker and Restoration Druid. The main reason for viability is bringing good defensives. I don't know how true this is. I think maybe for Preservation Evoker with Communion and 2 charges of time dilation, but for Resto Druid, I've found moments where you can just die through your cooldowns, die through Tree Form, die through Ironbark, so I don't know if that's 100% what's going on with Druid. Offensive tool, I think it's more crowd control, like Nature Swiftness Cyclone for Druid. Offensive tools with damage. again, with Preservation Evoker a bit. I don't think its damage is like hugely excessive. Neither do I think Resto Druid damage is maybe a bit when you're able to use like a lot of Wrath spam and Tree Form. NS Cyclone for sure. Spammable sleep and or stuns. I do agree with the ability to stun frequently, especially on Resto Druid. I think it's more control oriented with Resto Druid, not so much its defensive cooldowns. Preservation Evoker may be more of the whole package. The other healers are lacking on HPS and defensives and damage output. That is not true about Disc Priest. It has like the most defensive cooldowns and the most damage throughput. Paladin has the most cooldowns, maybe a little bit lower on the damage throughput. Restoration Shaman has 0 damage output. Defensive suck. So 0 damage output. He's right about that with Resto Shaman. Holy Priest has like some damage and pretty decent defensives with Angel, Immunity, and Guardian Spirits. I don't know if I agree 100% there. Other healers also have too low utility with stuns and CC, etc., sacrificing their entire momentum to land a CC that usually doesn't score you a kill or pressure, while also falling behind on healing due to loss of HPS and no real recovery and healing abilities. I think this is like a bigger issue with the game as a whole. One of the main goals of this expansion was to slow damage down and slow healing down, so your HP wasn't going from 100% to 0 in a millisecond and then going from 0 to 100 in a millisecond. And they've managed to accomplish that with, I want to say, at least 50% of the specs. I'd have to make a video of that, reviewing every single independent spec, which ones I think they've hit that mark and which ones they haven't, but I want to say around 50%. But then the other 50% are still capable of KOing you in 100 to 0, or capable of restabilizing your health bar very rapidly, which is creating that really fast gameplay that I thought we were trying to move away from, right? And there's 2 ways we could go about this. It's either you bring back the cooldown power for everything that you took it away from and decide to just reverse course, or you commit and you move into the other remaining 50% of the specs and finish the job. Because that's the main reason that as a healer you feel like you can't really do anything. It's because you're constantly preparing for the apocalypse of just getting completely one-shot. So it's kind of, that's like an overall tuning thing, maybe less than a specific thing to healers. During offensive push for CC, healers that don't have a panic button defensively won't be meta unless their HPS is incredibly strong. Suggestions for changes to make the specs better and viable. For Discipline Priest, he says lacks the ability to recover when it's falling too far behind. See, I feel like that's where strengths and weaknesses come in, right? If you're the healer that does top damage and you get to swing momentum, the drawback has to be that you don't get to just like immediately recover, right? There's got to be strengths and weaknesses. So this could be a bit dangerous to do. Bringing back abilities like Rapture, I don't think we're going to do that just because they wanted to commit to ability pruning and reducing keybind density. So life swap. See, this is what I'm saying. So he's basically saying they should reverse course, right, on the 50% of specs and bring back the cooldowns and bring back that kind of twitchy fast gameplay. Whereas my answer would be to go the opposite direction and target specs like Windwalker Monk, where when it pops Zenith, it completely one-shots you, and if it doesn't have it, it's not really doing anything. Because as a Disc Priest, to be able to heal through that, yeah, you feel like you need Rapture and Life Swap and Dome, because the Windwalker is still operating in War Within tech, and they took all of yours away. So yes, the solution is either you reverse course or you commit to everything else. And I would personally rather they commit to everything else, because I think the 100 to 0 and 0 to 100 healing gameplay is not good for a pro player, because if you're a DPS and you've activated your damage cooldown, you know this is your only chance to win, and you get CC'd. You're just like, oh, time out, I guess I can't win now. And then if you're a healer and you're new to the game, you don't know what's going on, they activated the damage cooldown, you're just instantly dead. So I was hoping to see a shift to something new, because we've seen that gameplay now for at least 3 expansions. Shadowlands was the most egregious of it. Dragonflight, they tuned it down a bit, but it was still pretty much like that. And War Within was like that. So I thought we were going somewhere new. This type of direction will not take it somewhere new. Will it get it to the point where it was in Dragonflight and stuff like that, where I had fun with the game? Yeah, it will, but it won't necessarily be the direction that I think they intended to take everything. He wants things to not be a choice no with ultimate penitence to help people deal with these situations. HPS increase and shield absorb increase could also change the outcome of this. Again, I think it's more of just bringing down the cooldown damage of other classes and buffing their damage outside of it, right? Recently, they just iterated on Fire Mage, nerfing the effectiveness of its combustion. Unfortunately, they didn't compensate you for that too much. They give you some fireball damage, and every Fire Mage I've seen is basically not even pressing that. So you just kind of got nerfed without any sort of compensation, unfortunately. I think they wanted to be like, oh, we'll give you sustained damage outside your cooldowns. It'll be in a casted spell, but I don't think it was enough in order to accomplish what they wanted. But that is the direction I think they should do, just with more specs. Because as soon as you get all of that under control, then the Disc Priest, who has been pruned like this, can operate with the kit that's remaining. Voidweaver Disc has insane damage, very overtuned damage, to be honest, but also very low healing. Hard to balance the spec. It would have to be sacrificing damage for healing. See, I think the Voidweaver, what they were doing with that is they were trying to like hone in on like the old school. You could play like Shadow RMP and play like a triple DPS style of play with your priest, have like this unique kind of vibe to it. And I think if you're going to do that with that approach with a hero talent tree, then it's going to have to also be understandable that it's not going to be competitively viable in all situations. It's kind of just like a niche way of playing the spec, maybe not the most optimal at the highest competitive level, but if people feel cool with it and it's unique, then I think it's okay if it exists like that. And that's just going to be kind of what you have to expect. For Restoration Shaman, he says that Shaman doesn't have good defensives. See, this is where I agree too. See, they brought the power out of a lot of Shaman's cooldowns. Even its Nature Swiftness does not top a target like it used to. Healing Tide Totem does not guarantee survival. Spirit Link, I would argue, is actually just totally garbage, though. You drop Link and it just makes your entire team die. It doesn't really feel like it's stabilizing anything. But they did that on purpose because it was to bring down the power of the cooldowns. So it was more about your overall throughput, which overall was good. That was the intent of the direction of the game. It's just they got to finish the other specs. We're only halfway through. So this, again, he kind of wants to rewind what's been done there. Buffing Healing Tide and potentially reducing the HP of it. So he wants Healing Tide to be like targetable again, but heal more. It would have to heal in a faster amount of time, though. It would make a lot of outplays in where to put your Healing Tide and moving it around with totem projection. I do agree with like the outplaying of hiding your totems and moving it around. I do agree with that type of gameplay because it's unique to Shaman. I just don't know. It's, again, maybe you can bring that back, but you have to do that after you correct the damage cooldowns of DPS. The Healing Tide would need to be low enough HP to be killable, but not one ability. Make the base HP of Spirit Link Totem higher. So you think Spirit Link Totem should be harder to take out, and Healing Tide should be easier to take out. So shifting a little bit of health on the totems. I don't think that's going to necessarily completely save Restoration Shaman either in this position. I think, again, it's like a core. I think Shaman is actually ethically designed with the intent of the goals that they wanted to go to, which I think makes sense on paper, like I've just described. So you might not even really need to do too much with Restoration Shaman. Yeah, you could tweak around the HP on the totems to make the outplay there around their totems more interactive, but it's coming down to like DPS tuning more than it is healer tuning in a lot of cases. For Holy Priest, the biggest problem with Holy Priest is that you do not have good enough defensives. The entire Holy Priest toolkit is built around letting your teammates drop below 50%, 35% to min-max your healing and mana efficiency. But again, that's like a strength and a weakness, right? You have Serenity, which is this really powerful instant heal, but you get limited charges. So when are you going to allocate it? Do you want to take the gamble on it as low as possible to get the biggest heal? Or do you use it a little bit early, but then you don't have it later and you got to cast? That's where the decision-making comes into Holy Priest. So again, I don't know if you want to mess around with that too much, because that's kind of what creates its identity. The only real defensive you have is Guardian Spirit, and in these explosive metas, you can't afford to let someone drop to 35 or 50%. See, he's acknowledging right there, explosive metas. It shouldn't be that. We should be reducing the effectiveness of damage cooldowns and buffing damage outside of cooldowns with the PvP tuning knobs they have. So this isn't even an issue, right? Like, and hope you save them with a big Serenity to heal efficiently. If you get caught in a crowd control right before they drop low, and they most likely die pre-cooldowns most of the times, or you overlap. It sounds like he's trying to defend Raikou for dying with no block or something. Overlap defensively with them. Best way to solve this problem is to either increase raw HPS or give back some old defensives that were removed, Ray of Hope or Life Swap. Again, he wants to bring back the cooldowns that provided burst healing, right, in recovery, which is just, you're bringing the game back to where it was before, which, again, I had fun with it. You could do that, or you can commit and keep working on the other remaining DPS specs, and then you don't have to necessarily do this, and we can see what the game is like in a completely new environment that we haven't been able to see yet. Potentially add a talent for Leap of Faith, that instead of you gripping your teammate to you, you instead leap to your teammate. This would help with landing fears and not throw the entire momentum in order to cross the map for a fear. Again, you can't cross the map for a fear because you need to be clenching your butt cheeks because you don't know when the cooldown's going to one-shot your team or not. So if the game was in a spot where you could be a little more tactical with your positioning without being worried about getting one-shot, that becomes less of an issue. So I'm noticing that just as a trend across everything here. We got the next portion of this for the rest of the healers. For Holy Paladin actually has a great toolkit. It offers stuns damage. It has great defensives, but raw HPS isn't as high as other healers, so I should do it in preservation. Buffing Herald 8 health per second would probably be a cool change, so they stop playing Lightsmith and bring back Repentance. I do think bringing back Repentance with a caveat of having a cooldown would be good. I think Paladin does feel like it's missing some type of like huge offensive outplay. I do think Repentance was actually like nice for the game. I think having crowd control on healers also is more beneficial for the game, just because you have to lose healing in order to get crowd control, so it's a little less oppressive because that's a pretty risky exchange. And again, you could give it more throughput, or you could bring down the cooldown, see where we're at that point. Because if you do too much all at once, that's where you get things. Because like if they do the nerf the cooldown damage, buff the sustain damage on the 50% of the specs that are remaining, but then buff Paladin at the same time, now Paladin's just a godlike healer and no one can die. So it's like you can't do all of it at the same time. You got to pick a direction, commit to it, and chip away at it in one way or another, or you're just never going to get anywhere. You're just going to be going in circles, recreating the same problem, which is kind of what's been happening. For Mistweaver Monk, the biggest problem after the recent changes is mana. Buffing Mana Tea would probably fix this problem alone. Mistweaver is way too strong into pet classes because of rushing Wind Kick and spinning Crane Kick. I agree with the Ancient Teachings here. The Ancient Teachings into pets is absolutely broken. You can just press spinning Crane Kick and it's uninterruptible, and it just tops the entire team. It's ridiculously high against pet classes. I don't know if there's a way to add some type of modifier so pets don't like. I get like you want to fist weave, you attack the pet that's overextended because you don't want to chase a target that's harder to hit to fist weave. But like that's supposed to be the trade-off, is that you get to do damage while you're punching and healing. So you got to chase a target rather than just hitting a bunch of pets that are standing like totems or you AoE them. I do think that is a big problem with it. Although most of the Mistweaver design is good, I don't know if it's necessarily agree with 100% with the mana. Damage is also slightly too high and impactful together with Zen Sphere. Again, damage modifier, right? Zen Sphere increases damage to the target, and that's adding modifiers to cooldowns, which creates one-shots. So these types of modifiers, I think they nerfed it recently, but it wasn't towards its amount of damage modified. It was something else. It was like its way of it being applied. Best solution would be to nerf Ancient Teachings or cap spinning Crane Kick to 3 players. I agree with that. Compensate somewhere else with small HPS or mana buff if Ancient Teachings nerf is too much. For Resto Druid, HPS slightly too high. Forcing every single team to swap on Life Blooms makes the game very hard to play because not every melee class has the mobility to just non-stop swap on Life Bloom, and hitting into Life Bloom won't score any kills until high dampening. Again, that's kind of the mechanic of Druid though, and it is the supposed weakness as well, and it becomes more of an issue in 3v3 than Shuffle. In Shuffle you can swap targets pretty easily, and dampening is faster. So it's not like as oppressive. Its mana regeneration, mana restore is way too high for Master Shapeshifter. I do agree with this, especially with the Tree of Life Wrath spamming that you can do. Best way to fix would be nerf mana restored from Master Shapeshifter, potentially increase the mana cost of abilities like Cyclone, and to also nerf Life Bloom. Again, I think like before you do any major nerfs, I think you've got to go into the damage dealing cooldowns, and you've got to fix how the meta of the game is overall. Well, not necessarily fix, but change it to what the intents were to be able to accomplish it. For Preservation Evoker, the health per second is slightly too high. Damage is way too high. Apparently, it's way too high. Constantly a Nullifying Shroud because Verdant is one of your main healing abilities. I agree with that as an annoying mechanic. Nerf overall health per second by a bit. Nerf Chronoflame damage output. Increase the CD of Verdant Embrace and make it so every third Verdant Embrace gives you Nullifying Shroud. That might kill the talent, or change the way completely that you're using it to avoid crowd control. Remove the ability to / cancel Aura Stasis, basically making all the stored abilities in the stasis release during a crucial CC. I kind of think they should do that just because that seems unintended, and also if you're a new evoker, you're not even going to know you can do that. And if you do finally actually get caught in CC and you have this as like some backup escape mechanism, then you just are completely unpunishable. Preservation Evoker gear full haste, which makes the spammable Sleepwalk CC very powerful. While hover is up, maybe increasing the cast time of Sleepwalk for Prez, or making it so you can't run while casting Sleepwalk. I think you have to do that if you never land one. If this went through, maybe increase the yards of Sleepwalk to make it easier to land from a distance. And again, that's the trade-off of the class fundamentally, right? You get all these benefits, but the downside is that you got to get really close to the engagement. So he says, I am fully aware some DPS specs might need some tuning if some of these changes go live. Maybe I make a DPS list next. Thanks for reading. This is purely my own opinion, and it mostly comes from high-end 3v3 tournaments and shuffles. So I agree with them on the fundamentals that healer balance is the most important thing. I think that the main thing that they should focus on, though, at the moment is buffing all of the healers below Mistweaver. I think that they should do that. And then work on getting the damage cooldowns down on the DPS that are still doing too much damage during the burst. And I can make a list if you guys want as a video. Let me know in the comments down below, reviewing every single spec that's doing too high damage endurance cooldowns but no damage outside of it, or maybe it does no damage in its cooldowns now and it does no damage outside of it, because some specs have been hit pretty hard with a nerf bat and ended up in a position like that. But to me, that's what the fundamental goal of the expansion should be, as far as balance and intended design. And it's just such a shame because they've got halfway there, but the other half isn't there, and it's just ruining it. Like, it's not what they said it was going to be as a result. And it's just this weird halfway point. So if you're one of the specs that did get, allocated your resources in that regard, you feel like crap. And then if you didn't, you're just running people over like a bulldozer. So I'm hoping we're going to just see more iteration on that and try and get the game to that point, ideally sooner than later, because we haven't got to see the game in that state before. And I was really hoping for a new experience rather than the suggestions here, which would basically just be rewinding us back to how the War Within and how Dragonflight and how Shadowlands to some extent as well were played. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown, and I will see you in the next one.